Heartbroken, she kissed a stranger in front of her ex, never knowing he was her millionaire CEO. Hello everyone, before we begin, if these stories bring you a little peace, a quiet tear, or a smile that stays until midnight, please take a moment to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. It's free and only takes a second of your time, but it helps this little channel grow so we can keep sharing moments that remind us what love is truly about. And tell us where you're watching from your words. Make this world feel a little warmer, a little kinder. There are moments when silence breaks louder than any scream. Let us return to our main character. The ballroom at the Harrington glimmered under white chandeliers. Soft jazz floated through the air, polished laughter echoing between glasses of champagne. Isabelle Hart had designed this place, every curve of marble, every line of light. Tonight was meant to be a celebration of her newest project, and of the life she thought she was building. Then she saw him, Ryan Collins, her partner in work and in love. He stood by the tall glass window, whispering to their client, her hand resting on his chest, his smile too familiar. Isabelle didn't need words. Her world cracked in perfect, elegant silence. She didn't rush. She didn't speak. She just walked toward the bar, heels clicking like the metronome of a collapsing heart. "Another champagne," she told the bartender, her voice steady, almost calm. Beside her, a man watched. Tall, dark suit. The kind of quiet confidence that makes the room bend around him. Gabriel Sloan. The name rang through every financial headline in Boston. He looked at her once, then, away, polite, detached. Isabelle turned her gaze toward the mirror behind the bar. Her reflection looked like a stranger. Perfect hair, trembling eyes. Behind her, Ryan's laughter with that woman still cut through the music like broken glass. Something inside her snapped. Not in rage, but in clarity. She turned to Gabriel. "Would you help me with something ridiculous?" He raised a brow. "That depends." She didn't wait for more. She set her glass down, took a breath that tasted like smoke and heartbreak, then leaned in and kissed him. It wasn't a shy kiss. It wasn't even graceful. It was desperate, raw, born of something deeper than revenge. The room froze. Conversations died mid-sentence. The music stumbled, recovered. Ryan's voice broke through the silence. "Isabelle, what the hell are you doing?" She pulled back, wiped her mouth with the back of her hand, and looked straight at him. "Finishing something I should have ended years ago." Gabriel didn't move. His hand still rested lightly on the counter. His eyes, gray, unreadable, met hers. Then, in a tone softer than the lights above them, he said, "You're bleeding." She blinked. The edge of her glass had cut her lip. A single drop of blood traced down, catching the silver of the bar's reflection. "It's fine," she whispered, and walked away. The crowd parted without a word. The click of her heels echoed down the marble corridor, fading into the city's pulse outside. Gabriel watched her go, the taste of champagne and something inexplicable still on his lips. He didn't understand her yet. Something in the chaos of her calm had pulled at him, a reminder of a life he'd forgotten how to feel. Behind him, the bartender whispered, "Do you know her?" He answered without looking up, "No, but I think I will." Outside, the wind from the harbor carried the faint scent of salt and lavender. And somewhere on the ballroom floor, the champagne glass she dropped rolled once, twice, then shattered, spilling light across the marble like a new beginning. Monday came with the taste of regret she couldn't wash away. Isabelle walked into Heart Design, her reflection in the glass doors reminding her of the night she wanted to forget: the kiss, the stranger, the shock on Ryan's face. She told herself it was over, just a mistake drowned in champagne. But whispers moved through the office like a current. Phones rang, doors opened, managers rushed down the hallway. Something was happening, something big. "Emergency meeting, 9 o'clock, someone said. "Full staff." By the time Isabelle sat at her desk, her pulse had already lost its rhythm. She straightened her notes, fixed her hair, anything to look composed. Yet beneath the calm, her thoughts circled the same image. The man at the bar, the one whose eyes saw straight through her. Inside the conference room, the air was too still. Everyone waited. Her boss stood near the screen, clearing his throat with the kind of excitement that always came before bad news. "As of today," he announced, "Heart Design has officially been acquired by Sloan Group." Gasps rippled through the room. Sloan Group, London-based, ruthless, legendary for transforming small firms into global names. Someone whispered, "The new CEO's arriving today." Isabelle kept her gaze on her notepad, tracing invisible lines, pretending she wasn't curious. Pretending she wasn't terrified. The door opened. Polished shoes stepped onto the marble floor, deliberate, unhurried. She didn't need to look. Her heartbeat told her who it was. Gabriel Sloan. He looked impossibly composed in a navy suit. Tie perfect. Expression unreadable. The man she had kissed in a moment of heartbreak now stood before her as the man who owned the company she worked for. "Good morning," he said, voice steady, cool. "I'm Gabriel Sloan. I value order, results, and honesty. Everything else is negotiable." Soft laughter flickered around the table. Isabelle didn't move. She wanted to disappear into the chair, into the floor, anywhere but here. Then his gaze swept the room slow, searching until it landed on her. Miss Hart. Her name in his mouth was both a whisper and a weight. "I don't forget faces that challenge me." No one spoke. The clock on the wall ticked once, twice. Isabelle felt her throat tighten. She forced a polite smile, nodded, and wrote something meaningless on her notepad just to look occupied. He moved on, talking about structure, innovation, expectations. But she heard none of it. Every word came through water. When the meeting ended, chairs scraped back, voices rose, people left. She stayed seated, breathing through the noise. When she finally stood, she caught his reflection in the glass wall, watching her leave, unreadable as before. Back at her desk, sunlight spilled through the tall windows. It slid across her papers, her half-finished sketches, the faint outline of a building she had once dreamed of designing with Ryan. The light touched everything except her heart, still tangled in confusion. She exhaled slowly, tracing the rim of her coffee mug, its reflection trembling in the golden morning. Somewhere inside her, a line had shifted. Not broken, not mended, just changed. And as the city moved outside, Isabelle Hart realized she had just stepped into a world she no longer recognized. The news spread fast. Hart Design had landed the Sloan Grand Hotel contract. It was the biggest project in the company's history, and Isabelle was leading it. She still remembered the moment Gabriel's name appeared beside hers on the project charter. He had looked at her briefly across the meeting room. No smile, no warning. Just the quiet declaration of war. 2 days later, she was in his office. Blueprints covered the table, lines of glass and steel stretching like battle plans. "This facade," she said, pointing with her pencil, "if you keep the vertical panels this close, it'll trap heat. It looks striking on paper, but it won't breathe." Gabriel leaned back in his chair, hands steepled. "It's not supposed to breathe, Miss Hart. It's supposed to impress." "People don't live inside impressions," she countered, lifting her chin. His eyes flicked up, amused. "You sound very sure of that." "I am." "Then prove it." She crossed her arms. "That's what I'm doing." The tension between them was almost architectural, measured, designed, impossible to ignore. For the next hour, they argued like two minds in perfect dissonance. She defended her vision of space that felt human. He pushed for boldness, risk, spectacle. Every word was precise. Every glance, a quiet dare. When she leaned over the table to mark a correction, he mirrored her movement, close enough for her to smell his cologne cedar and cold air. Neither stepped back. He picked up one of her drafts, studying the curve she'd drawn. "You build with empathy," he said. "That's rare. Don't mistake empathy for weakness." "I don't." His voice softened. "I find it inconvenient." Their eyes met again, long enough for silence to hum between them. Then she turned away, gathering her notes, breaking the spell. By afternoon, the meeting room was littered with revisions. Coffee had gone cold. The skyline outside had turned pale, yet something in the air had shifted like the first current before a storm. Gabriel stood at the window, speaking without looking at her. "Do you always fight this hard?" "When I care about something, yes." He smiled faintly. "Then we might actually finish this project." She rolled up the blueprints, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "You sound surprised." "I'm not," he said. "I'm intrigued." Their hands met for a moment as she handed him the sketches. Just a brush of fingertips, but it was enough. Her pulse stuttered, his expression didn't change. The line between professional and personal held, but barely. When she turned to leave, her pencil snapped in, half clean, sharp, a tiny sound swallowed by the quiet. She froze, staring at the broken graphite in her palm. Gabriel glanced over, his voice low. Guess even perfection has a breaking point. Isabelle placed the pieces on the table, forcing a small smile. Only means it's time to sharpen again. He watched her go, the faintest hint of admiration in his eyes. The meeting room emptied, leaving behind the faint scent of paper and tension. On the table, the broken pencil lay beside the final sketch, 2 lines that had finally met in the middle. And as the light from the window stretched across the plans, it glinted on the graphite edge where work ended, and something unspoken began. The days that followed blurred into a rhythm Isabelle hadn't expected: late mornings, meetings that stretched past dusk, quiet coffees that lingered too long. Gabriel was never unkind, never unprofessional, yet there was something in the way he paused before speaking to her, the way his voice softened when he asked for her opinion, that made the air between them shift. Sometimes she caught him watching her, not with the arrogance she once thought he carried, but with a stillness that felt almost tender. And sometimes, when she looked back, he looked away just a moment too late. Their collaboration became seamless. He would finish her sentences in meetings. She could predict his objections before he voiced them. Colleagues whispered about their chemistry, but neither of them broke the surface. They worked. They built. They pretended not to feel. When the invitation came for the Milan Design Conference, it felt inevitable that they would go together. The city greeted them with sunlit marble and the smell of rain. Their hotel overlooked the Duomo, its spires catching the late light like promises. During the day, they spoke to investors, toured exhibits, and presented their designs side by side. By evening, they were 2 silhouettes against a skyline that glowed gold. That night, Isabelle couldn't sleep. She stepped onto the balcony, glass of red wine in hand, the hum of the city alive below her. The air was cool, scented with stone and night jasmine. Behind her, she heard the door slide open. "You should be resting," Gabriel said quietly. "I could say the same to you." "No." He joined her at the railing. The Duomo shimmered beneath them, white marble veined with shadow. For a while, they said nothing. Then she spoke, her voice low. "I knew who you were that night." He turned, eyes narrowing slightly. "At the bar?" She nodded. "I'd seen your photo in the trade journals. Everyone in design knows who Gabriel Sloan is." He studied her. "Then why?" She stared into her glass, watching the reflection of the moon ripple inside it. "I just needed to feel something real." He was silent long enough for her to think he hadn't heard. Then softly, "And did you?" "Yes." She met his gaze. "And that's what scared me." The air thickened. Somewhere far below, the city bells chimed. He took a small step closer, close enough for her to feel the warmth of him, to hear the breath he caught in his throat. "You think feelings make us weak?" he murmured. "I think they make us reckless." "Arwell." His smile was faint, but his eyes stayed on hers. "Maybe reckless is what we both need." Neither moved. The night held them there on the edge of something fragile, something alive. The distance between them thinned until there was only the taste of silence, the whisper of wind, and the faint tremor of possibility. Then, almost at the same moment, they both exhaled and stepped back. If they crossed that line, there would be no going back to work, to calm, to reason. And yet, as they looked at each other, neither could deny what already existed, the quiet truth pulsing beneath restraint. Gabriel lifted his glass, the moonlight catching in the dark red surface. "To the things we don't say," he said. She raised hers. "And to the ones we can't." Their glasses touched lightly, the sound small, clear, almost tender. For a moment, the world felt suspended. Then he turned, leaving her with the city and the echo of his breath. The moon climbed higher, silvering the balcony, glinting against her untouched wine. In its reflection, the line between fear and feeling shimmered faintly like light on glass, waiting to break. The morning after Milan, the air in the office felt different, charged, restless. Isabelle buried herself in deadlines, sketches, models. But even as she drew, she could feel Gabriel's gaze from across the glass walls of his office. It wasn't the gaze of a boss anymore. It was quieter, deeper, something unspoken, still pulsing beneath restraint. That afternoon, he called her in. His tone was calm, but his eyes were darker than usual. A folder lay open on his desk, filled with financial reports and blueprints. "Do you remember the structural file you submitted for the Milan project?" he asked. "Of course. Why?" He pushed the folder toward her. Inside were annotations, transfers, and falsified invoices. Isabelle frowned. "These figures aren't mine." They aren't supposed to exist," he said. "But they do under my brother's name." She froze. "Oliver?" Gabriel nodded. "He's been moving money through the project fund. I had suspicions for months, but I needed proof. Your file, the one you sent directly to the contractors, didn't match his version. That mismatch exposed everything." She stared at the pages, realization dawning. "So that's why you bought Heart Design. You were investigating him." His jaw tightened. "I didn't want to believe it, but the company was rotting from within. He paused, his voice softening. "You didn't just save it. You reminded me what integrity looks like." For a long moment, silence filled the room. The only sound was the hum of the city beyond the windows. Isabelle's throat tightened. "I didn't mean to uncover anything," she said. "I was just doing my job. Sometimes doing the right thing is exactly what saves us," he replied. She shook her head lightly, trying to breathe past the knot in her chest. "And what now?" "I've already confronted him. He's stepping down. There'll be noise, maybe headlines. But it's done." Then he looked at her, really looked. The kind of look that sees more than it should. "Isabelle," he said quietly, "when I first met you, you didn't just challenge me. You reminded me I could feel something real again." Her heart stumbled. "Gabriel," he took a small step closer. "I'm not asking for an answer. I just need to tell you somewhere between the chaos and the calm, I fell for you." The room seemed to shrink. The light above flickered soft blue-white against the steel edges of the desk, wrapping them in a strange, fragile intimacy. She whispered, "Your power, Gabriel. I'm just noise trying to stay quiet." He smiled faintly, pain flickering behind it. "You think that's all you are?" "I don't know what I am right now," she said. "Everything happened too fast. Maybe what I feel, it's just me trying to fill the space someone else left behind." He reached for her, then stopped, fingers hovering midair. "And if it's not?" Her eyes shone. "Then I'm even more afraid." Neither spoke after that. The silence between them wasn't cold this time, it was aching, full of all the words neither dared to say. The overhead lights dimmed as evening settled, turning white to silver blue. On the table, their reflections blurred together, two people caught between what they wanted and what they feared. When she finally left, the door clicked shut softly behind her. Gabriel stood in the fading light, staring at the empty chair where she had Saturday. He exhaled, a slow, uneven breath, then whispered to the quiet room. "You're wrong, Isabelle. You were never noise. You were the song I didn't know I was missing." "Oh." The glow from the lamp spilled across the desk, pale and unwavering like a truth that refused to fade. The days after she walked away were the quietest Gabriel had known in years. Work resumed, meetings filled the hours, but everything felt muted, like the sound had been turned down in his world. He still saw her name in reports, heard her laughter echo faintly from across the hall, but the space between them had grown into something heavier than silence. He tried to let it be, for a while, but peace refused to come that way. So one morning, when he learned from her assistant that Isabelle always stopped by a small tea shop on Beacon Street before work, he found himself there, hands in his pockets, heart racing in a way that made no sense for a man who negotiated billion-dollar contracts. She was sitting by the window, steam rising from her cup, sketchbook open beside it. Morning light spilled across her face, gentle and golden. For a moment, he didn't dare interrupt. Then he stepped closer. She looked up, startled. "Gabriel?" He held out a small bouquet of lavender, simple, imperfect, tied with a white ribbon. "I didn't come to talk about work." Her smile was polite, cautious. "Then what are you here for?" He took a folded piece of paper from his coat pocket and placed it on the table. "For once," he said quietly, "let me design something with you, not for you." She hesitated, eyes softening as she unfolded the paper. Inside was a hand-drawn sketch of a small house, warm light glowing through open windows, a garden full of lavender and mint. Beneath it, a single line, "The House of Peace." "It's beautiful," she whispered. "It's not finished," he said. "I can't build it alone." For a moment, she said nothing. The cafe around them hummed with quiet conversation, the sound of teaspoons and morning air. Finally, she exhaled. "You never stop, do you? Not when it matters." She smiled faintly, a trace of affection flickering through her guard. "Then maybe start smaller," she said, taking a sip of tea. "Peace isn't something you build. It's something you learn to sit with." He nodded, understanding more than he wanted to admit. "Then maybe you could teach me." She looked at him then, not the powerful man, not the name on the building, but the man standing in front of her, trying to find his way back to something simple. "I'm still learning myself," she said. "That's fine," he murmured. "We'll learn together." That afternoon, a small envelope arrived at her office. Inside was another sketch, a sunlit window, a steaming cup, a chair turned slightly toward the light. No message, no signature. Just an image that said everything he couldn't. The next day, another sketch came, a small garden path. Then, a week later, a door left ajar, with soft light spilling out. Each drawing was an invitation, a conversation without words. She kept them all in a drawer by her desk, though she never replied. Yet every time she opened it, the faint scent of lavender lingered, and she caught herself smiling. Outside, spring crept into the city. The windows in her apartment stayed open longer each morning, letting in the warmth she'd been afraid to feel. One evening, as she brewed her tea, she looked toward the horizon where the sunset melted into gold. The world seemed softer somehow, like it, too, had been waiting to breathe again. And though she hadn't told him yet, a part of her knew, his sketches weren't just drawings. They were his way of saying he was still there quietly, patiently designing peace, one line at a time. For weeks, the sketches had come like clockwork, one every 2 days, each more tender than the last. And then, one morning, nothing arrived. No envelope, no lavender, no quiet reminder that somewhere out there, someone was still thinking of her. At first, Isabelle told herself it was fine. Maybe he was busy. Maybe he'd finally stopped chasing something she couldn't give. But by the second day, she couldn't focus. Her desk felt too neat, her tea too quiet. Even the air seemed to wait for something that didn't come. When her assistant mentioned in passing that Mr. Sloane had canceled all meetings for the week, something in her chest tightened. That evening, she stayed late, scrolling through files, pretending to work. But her mind was elsewhere. And when she caught sight of a small calendar memo left open on his shared project drive, Willow Crest Clinic, 7 p.m., her hands froze on the keyboard. Willow Crest Clinic. She knew the name. A care facility on the city's edge, quiet and dignified. It specialized in palliative treatment. She'd once designed part of its patient wing. A few searches later, the pieces fit together like a lock she wished she'd never opened. His mother had spent her final months there, years ago. The woman he rarely mentioned, the one whose absence seemed to live in the way he held himself, controlled, precise, unreachable. She leaned back, staring at the glow of the screen. The sketches, the silence, the need for peace, it all made sense now. His distance wasn't arrogance, it was armor. Outside, the city lights flickered. A storm gathered, low and heavy. She told herself to leave, to go home, to stop caring so much. But her heart had already made the decision, before her mind could argue. Hours later, the office was empty except for the soft hum of the rain. The elevators dinged faintly in the distance. Then the door opened. Gabriel stepped in drenched, exhausted, his usual composure stripped away. He didn't see her at first. He just walked to his desk, dropped his keys, and sat down heavily, pressing his palms against his eyes. For a long moment, he stayed like that, shoulders trembling once, twice barely. A quiet sound escaped him, not quite a sob, not quite a breath. It was the sound of someone who had spent too many years pretending not to feel. Isabelle stood frozen in the shadowed corner, torn between the urge to vanish and the instinct to go to him. Then, slowly, she crossed the room. He heard her steps but didn't look up. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice hoarse. "I know," she whispered, "but neither should you." He let out a broken laugh. "You always find a way to say the wrong right thing." She stopped beside him, close enough to feel the quiet shake of his breath. "You don't have to keep standing alone," she said softly. His head lifted. Their eyes met no walls, no distance left. Just pain, raw and unguarded. "I don't know how to stop," he admitted. "Then don't," she said. "Just rest." She reached out, hesitating only for a second before taking his hand. His fingers were cold. When he didn't pull away, she stepped closer and drew him gently into her arms. For the first time, Gabriel didn't resist. He let his head fall against her shoulder, his breath unsteady against her neck. The scent of rain and lavender filled the space between them. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. The city murmured beyond the glass, the storm easing into silence. In the quiet, something shifted, not fixed, not finished, but softened. Two people who had spent too long surviving in isolation finally learning that peace wasn't found in walls or strength. It lived, instead, in the quiet pulse of another heartbeat, pressed close, steady, human. The weeks that followed felt like sunlight after a storm. They stopped pretending. There were no more sketches, no guarded glances, only moments that felt unreasonably, beautifully real. They worked side by side, ate dinner at her favorite cafe, sometimes walked home in silence, their hands brushing just enough to say everything words couldn't. At last, Gabriel allowed himself to love without strategy. And Isabelle allowed herself to believe that this him could be safe. For a while it was, until the whispers began. It started with a few looks at the office, lingering longer than usual, a joke in the break room. Then one morning, an email she wasn't supposed to see forwarded, accidentally her name tied to his, with words like promotion, favor, bedroom. Her chest hollowed out. By lunch, the whispers had turned into stares. When she passed the corridor, someone muttered, "Guess sleeping with the boss pays off." Her hands shook so hard, she nearly dropped her notebook. That evening, Gabriel came to find her, his face tight. "I heard what they're saying," he said. "I'll handle it." "Handle it?" she snapped. "With what, another meeting? Another press statement?" He stepped closer. "With truth." "The truth won't matter," she said quietly. "You're Gabriel Sloan. Every room you walk into bends around your name. I'll always be the story they whisper about." He opened his mouth, but she shook her head. "You can't fix this for me. And if you try, it'll only prove them right." Her eyes glistened, but her voice was steady. "I built my career alone. I won't let love destroy that." He reached for her hand. "Don't do this." She pulled away, whispering, "I have to." The next morning, her resignation letter was on his desk. No note, no explanation, only her signature, elegant and final. When she left the building, she didn't look back. But as the elevator doors closed, her heart broke with every floor that passed between them. Gabriel stared at her letter for a long time. The paper shook in his hand, and for the first time in years, he felt powerless. All his control, all his influence, useless against something as simple as her silence. By the afternoon, the rumors had reached investors. Whispers of favoritism, internal scandal. The press loved it. That night, he barely slept. Every word she had said replayed in his mind until dawn. The next morning, he walked into the office, not as the untouchable CEO everyone feared, but as a man who had finally decided to fall, if that's what it took to rise again. The entire company gathered. He stood before them, pale under the lights. "There's a rumor going around," he began. His voice didn't waver. "About Miss Hart and me." The room went still. "I'm not here to deny it. I'm here to say that every word of it is wrong." "Oh." He paused, breathing through the tension. "She didn't need my help to rise. I needed hers. She reminded me what honesty looks like when the world rewards lies." A murmur spread through the crowd, quiet, uncertain. "And if anyone here questions her integrity," he continued, eyes sharp now, "they'll answer to me." Then he set down his notes, meeting every gaze head-on. "I'm taking a leave of absence," he said simply, "to fix what I broke, and to fight for what I should never have let go." Oh. When he stepped away from the podium, no one clapped, but no one spoke, either. The silence was respect or maybe awe. Outside, the wind moved softly through the city, as if carrying his words to wherever she was. And somewhere, Isabelle lifted her face to the same light, whispering to herself, "He kept his promise. He fell, to rise again." A month had passed since the press conference that silenced the noise but left a hollow echo in both their hearts. Gabriel kept his word. He disappeared from the spotlight, left the towers of glass and power, and found her where the city quieted. A small apartment near the river, the kind of place that smelled of coffee and unfinished dreams. He didn't bring flowers. He didn't bring promises. Just himself stripped of the armor, the arrogance, the name. When she opened the door, she didn't smile right away. She just looked at him, really looked, and said softly, "You found me." He nodded. "This time I didn't let someone else do the finding." From that moment, the world slowed down. No headlines, no meetings, no boardrooms. Only two people relearning what it meant to exist beside each other. They cooked together badly, sometimes, laughing when the pasta burned. They walked to the farmer's market on Sundays, argued over which lavender smelled sweeter. They sat by the river, legs dangling off the old pier, her head resting on his shoulder. The silence between them no longer heavy but full. For the first time, Gabriel didn't plan every step ahead. And Isabelle didn't feel the need to apologize for simply being happy. When the month ended, the world came calling again. The board wanted him back. Investors wanted his name on their headlines once more. He asked her, "Will you come with me?" She shook her head gently. "No, I think I finally know where I belong." He frowned, not hurt, just curious. "Where's that?" She smiled, that soft, grounded smile he had fallen in love with. "Right here. But not behind you. Beside you." That week, she launched her own firm, Heart and Haven Studio. A small, independent company focused on sustainable architecture and human-centered design. Gabriel became her first investor, not out of love, but belief. When they signed the contract, she extended her hand. "Business partners?" she teased. He took it, holding her gaze. "Business partners," he agreed before leaning in and kissing her, slow and sure, as if to seal two promises at once. Months turned into seasons. The city moved on, but they built something that didn't belong to the chaos, a life designed in patience, trust, and quiet courage. 1 year later, Isabelle stood on a stage in New York, the lights catching in her hair as she accepted the Innovator of the Year award for her firm's new community housing project. The audience applauded. Cameras flashed. Gabriel stood at the back of the hall, unnoticed, hands in his pockets, a proud smile tracing the corners of his lips. When she finished her speech, she found him in the crowd. Their eyes met, no need for words. He mouthed quietly, "It was the best investment I ever made." After the ceremony, they walked out into the night. The city lights reflected on the river like scattered glass. She reached for his hand. "We've come a long way." He nodded. "We didn't just love each other, Isabelle. We rebuilt each other." The wind moved softly through the streets, carrying their laughter away. Two souls who had fallen not to break, but to rise. Sometimes, love doesn't save you. It rebuilds you, one quiet choice at a time. If you believe that true love grows through grace and courage, follow Valen's stories where power learns to love again.